They were laughing. Loud, careless laughter. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. The kind that fills up a quiet diner on a slow Tuesday afternoon and tells everyone exactly who thinks they're in charge. Two police officers, boots still muddy from patrol, kicked back in a booth near the window. They didn't lower their voices. They never had to. Not in a town like Briar Creek. Not when the badge was louder than any conscience. They joked about slamming some kid during a traffic stop. Said he needed to be taught a lesson. One of them, Officer Trent Mallory, leaned back, grinning wide, and told a story about making an elderly woman cry at a routine checkpoint. Bragged about making her take off her shoes on the side of the road, like she was smuggling explosives in her orthopedic soles. People heard them. Of course they did. But no one said a word. They rarely did. Except her. She sat alone at a booth in the far corner, back straight, hands folded, tea untouched. Eloise Granger, 83, wearing a pressed gray skirt, a soft floral blouse, and a hat that sat like a crown, dignified, quiet, invisible. If you only looked skin deep. Until she stirred her tea once, set the spoon down, and spoke. You boys ever get tired of hearing yourselves talk? It wasn't loud, it wasn't sharp, but it sliced the room clean in half. Mallory turned, eyes narrowing, a smirk already forming. His partner, Officer Reeve, shifted in his seat, suddenly aware that maybe the joke wasn't landing the way it used to. Mind your business, ma'am, Mallory said, his tone flat. Eloise didn't blink. This is my business, she replied. When cruelty becomes casual, it stops being just your shame. It belongs to all of us. A few diners looked down at their plates. A couple froze mid-chew. The waitress ducked into the back. Because in a town like Briar Creek, silence was survival, and confrontation meant consequences. Mallory stood. All 6 feet of chest-thumping ego and state-issued arrogance. He walked over to her booth and said, "Let's see some ID." Eloise looked up slowly. "No, no," he repeated, surprised she didn't flinch. "You don't need it," she said. He demanded it again. She stayed still. And that's when the fuse lit. Mallory yanked her up. This woman, barely 100 pounds, who once taught Sunday school and raised 2 children while working nights as a nurse. He twisted her arms behind her back, slapped the cuffs on with a little too much enthusiasm, and walked her out like she was dangerous. The charge. Disturbing the peace. The peace he'd been busy poisoning since the hash browns hit the griddle. At the station, they booked her without a second thought. They wrote up the usual, non-compliant, belligerent, hostile. Reeves signed off on it, though his hand shook a little. Maybe his gut still worked. They left her sittings in a holding cell, paint peeling from the walls, fluorescent lights buzzing off-key. She didn't ask for food, didn't speak, just waited. Then she asked for her phone call, and here's where everything changed. She didn't call a lawyer, she called her son, Malcolm Granger, federal prosecutor, special counsel with the Department of Justice. And unlike his mama, Malcolm wasn't quiet. 3 hours later, the front door of the station opened with a low creak and a gust of hot summer air. Malcolm stepped inside, dressed in dark slacks and a plain white shirt, sleeves rolled, tie loosened, not flashy, but heavy with purpose. He approached the desk, handed over his credentials, and said just 5 words. "I'm here for Eloise Granger." The officer blinked, glanced at the DOJ badge, and swallowed hard. Within the hour, federal agents filled the station. IT specialists, legal observers, internal affairs liaisons. And Malcolm, calm as stone, asking to review body cam footage from the diner incident. The footage was gone, deleted. Technical error, they claimed. But one agent, a woman named Kim Park, sharp as glass, flagged a log showing the file had been manually deleted and overwritten. That's when Malcolm leaned in. "Pull the backups," he said. And they did. Took a bit of digging, but they found it, buried under an altered timestamp, mislabeled, and hidden away in a temporary directory. They played the footage on a dim screen in a side office. There was Eloise, calm, sitting quietly, speaking softly. No yelling, no aggression, no disturbance. Just a woman who dared to speak up, and two officers who didn't like that one bit. The report Mallory filed a lie, flat-out fabrication. And that wasn't the only one. As the DOJ dug deeper, patterns emerged. Reports with missing timestamps, body cam footage inconsistently uploaded, use of force cases that somehow never made it to the review board. And at the center of most of it, Officer Trent Mallory. But here's the twist you didn't see coming. Officer Reeve. He cracked. He'd been keeping copies, notes, logs, even a few USB sticks with raw footage he didn't trust the system to handle, honestly. He sat down with Malcolm and told him everything. About the threats, the locker room jokes, the silent code everyone followed. "I wanted to report him months ago," he said, "but I didn't think anyone would listen." Malcolm didn't respond right away. He just stared at him, slow and cold, then said, "You will testify. Names, times, every deleted file. And if you flinch, if you hesitate, I'll drag you through every courtroom in this state." Reeve nodded, shaking, but relieved. By the end of the week, DOJ agents had seized precinct servers, raided personal lockers, and flagged over 2 years' worth of altered reports. Some incidents had never even been assigned case numbers. They just vanished. The chief, Calvin Devens, was dragged into it. Turns out he'd signed off on dozens of questionable files without review, ignored complaints, protected Mallory because he got the job done. But not this time. Not with the DOJ watching. Not with protesters outside the station. Signs reading, "I am Eloise. We won't stay quiet." Who else did you erase? One morning, Reeve walked into the courtroom with trembling hands and told the truth under oath. He talked about Mallory tightening handcuffs just to hear people scream, about evidence disappearing when it didn't fit the narrative, about how complaints were joked about over beer. It wasn't just a rogue cop. It was a culture. Mallory. Convicted on multiple federal charges, falsifying records, civil rights violations, obstruction of justice. Sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. No parole. Chief Devens, stripped of command, facing ethics charges. Reeve cooperated fully, got reduced charges, still lost his badge. And the rest of the department restructured, reviewed, monitored by federal oversight. A full audit of every report from the last decade. But Eloise. She never raised her voice. She didn't demand headlines. She just showed up, in the same gray skirt, the same sensible shoes, and watched the trial unfold. On the day of the verdict, a reporter asked her what she wanted now. She smiled, tired but unbroken, and said, "They thought they could silence me. But silence doesn't protect anyone. It just delays the reckoning." Then she walked away, slow, steady, like every step was a lesson. So what now? That's the part that sticks with me. Because this wasn't just about one arrest or one town. This was about how silence becomes policy, about how dignity gets erased, one unchecked box at a time, and it's about how sometimes justice walks in with a folder, a badge, and the quiet fury of a son raised by a woman who refused to bend. Now it's your turn. Was justice served, Or was Eloise just lucky to have someone in power on her side? How many others are still sitting in holding cells, forgotten, because they don't have a Malcolm to call? Let's talk about it. Share your thoughts below. Speak up, because silence is no longer an option. And if this story moved you, share it. Someone else might need to hear that even in the darkest rooms, the right voice can still flip the whole system.